Hi beauties, welcome back to the channel. So nice to have you all back again, guys. Today we are going to be diving right into another unique and lovely video from Finland. But this time around, we're going to be reacting to an animated video from Finland. Okay, guys. So the title is The Animated History of Finland. You all know how Finland has been one of the countries I always react to. This is because they've got so many good things to learn from. They've got unique cultural diversities. They've got humble people and resilient people, and oh, their military. I would not forget their military personnel. They are so good, especially my snow fighters, and their food, of course, yummy. So today we're going to be diving right into this firsthand, right? So stick with me to the end, go nowhere. Without further ado, let's jump right in, guys.
So you guys have heard of Finland, right? The Arctic wonderland in northern Europe bordering Russia and Sweden. And Norway too, I guess. Sami, Vikings, the so-called White Death, Grand Duchies, which are like regular duchies, just better, Swedes, Soviets, and in between it all, the reindeer just minding their own business. Whatever you've heard of the Nordic nation, its story goes back pretty far.
Okay, let's hear what it's about, okay? I'm so curious to know what it's got to say here, guys. Are these the things that have got Finland, or let's say the president of Finland, since the history of Finland?
Finland is located right in the north of Europe, partly within the Arctic Circle. Most foreigners tend to mistakenly label the Finns as Scandinavian, which is only partly true since only the very top of the country is actually in Scandinavia. It would be more correct to use the term Nordic or Northern European, which encompasses the more broad cultural similarities they have with their neighbors. The region was inhabited mostly on the coast by a people that outsiders called the Fenni. The Finns called their land Suomi, which means land of lakes, which if you've ever been to Finland is pretty accurate. The Finns and the Sami are ethnically Uralic and speak languages in the Finno-Ugric family, meaning they are distinct from Caucasians. But then again, we don't really know, and theories on the subject are about as common as vodka. Things were pretty peachy for the Finns until they encountered a little-known Germanic group from southern Scandinavia, the Vikings. The Vikings raided along the Finnish and Baltic shores for many centuries, beginning the process of cultural influence that the Norse would have on Finland for almost its entire history. Norse people also arrived in Finland as traders and settlers, bringing with them culture, food, customs, and traditions. The Finns were never really united, but rather a group of small villages and farms with similar language and ancestry, so resistance was light at best. Norse settlement in Finland increased dramatically from the 9th to 12th centuries, mostly from modern-day Sweden and Denmark, which would begin the long-standing claim of the Scandinavian powers on the Finnish lands. The Scandinavian powers fought for control over much of the Proto-Finnic lands, including parts of Estonia. To make things worse, even the Russians from Novgorod got involved from time to time. But before anyone knew what was going on, the medieval ages rolled around, and crusading was the hot new fashion. The Northern Crusades between 1150 and 1293 saw the Swedes conquer vast amounts of Finnic land, laying the foundations for the Swedish Empire. In addition to land and dominance, the expanding kingdom had a lot of symbolic significance for the Swedes, who had been struggling for many years against the Danes, their main rivals, who had a bit of a head start on the whole empire-building business. The Swedes brought with them the Swedish language and also lots of war. King Magnus Eriksson wasn't a fan of the Russians, and Finland often got caught up in the crossfire of the two nations' disputes. Not long after, Finland became part of the most powerful northern personal union you've never heard of, the Union of Kalmar, to try to counter the monopoly on trade from another union you've never heard of, the Hanseatic League. Princess Margaret of Denmark had her eyes set on the crowns of Sweden and Norway. And don't get us wrong, the royal families on these three countries were pretty intertwined by this point, and they mostly spoke the same language, so uniting them wasn't exactly the most far-fetched idea. She married the King of Sweden and succeeded as regent for her adopted son Eric, who became the King of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, who by the way just happened to be a duke from Poland. The union was signed in 1397 in the Swedish city of Kalmar, which gave the new country its name. Bonus points for creativity. The union was plagued by internal struggles and fighting with the Danes and Russians, much of the time in the Finnish mainland. The Livonian Wars of the 1500s was a turbulent time for Finland. Four major powers warred for control over more land, resulting in a large territorial expansion into northern Finland. The war also had internal struggles, with Sigismund Vasa briefly being king of both Poland and Sweden until being deposed by his nephew King Charles. The conflicts were particularly harsh on the people of Finland, who revolted against the Swedish crown during the Finnish Club War. This ended well for no one, least of all the Finns and the Sami. 17th century Finland found itself part of a dominant military power, and many Finns served in the Swedish army. The 1600s were pretty big in a religious war, and Sweden, devout Lutherans since 1527, couldn't help but get involved. Protestants were like the hipsters of Europe at this point, which is all fine and dandy unless those hipsters happen to control a large modernized army. The 30 Years' War and the Northern Wars had many Finns such as the Hakapolita die for the Swedish crown symbolically to protect their faith.
Oh my God.
But if they did happen to gain some land in the process, well, that was just an added benefit. Unusually cold temperatures and famine meant the Finns weren't ready for the next conflict the Swedes would bring them to, the Great Northern War. Sweden had gone to war with literally all of its close neighbors, and the Finnish countryside was ravaged by freezing temperatures and the Russian army, killing nearly half of Finland's population. Finland was mostly at peace after that, and may have been a disputed kingdom for a while. It's complicated. The Finns more earnestly began to struggle for independence during the period of Enlightenment. When the Napoleonic Wars rolled around, Sweden, just like all the cool kids, went to war with France, and somewhere in the middle of it, Russia annexed Finland. How this happened is long and complicated, and we'll elaborate more when we do episodes on Sweden and Denmark. But long story short, the Russians wanted to push their border as far west from St. Petersburg as possible, and gave the Finns autonomy under the Grand Duchy of Finland to do it. Until World War I, the duchy remained peaceful and didn't serve under the Russian serfdom. By the time the 20th century dawned, the Finns were thoroughly infected by the new European fever: nationalism. In 1917, during the First World War, Finland gained independence, but just like pretty much all of its European neighbors at the time, it became split on ideological divides, in this case, conservatives and socialists. And ideological divides very rarely didn't lead to civil war in those days. The Finnish Civil War ensued and the capitalists won, but that wouldn't be the end of socialism or other ideologies in Finland. The Second World War saw a major conflict in Finland. 2 months after the fall of Warsaw, the Soviet army invaded Finland. This proxy conflict is labeled the Winter War since most of the battles were fought in thick winter snow, making famous the Finnish ski troops, Molotov cocktails, and Simo Häyhä, the White Death. Häyhä was a Finnish marksman who had the highest confirmed kills more than any other sniper in history in a major war. The Soviets named him the White Death, since he blended into the snow and the men feared him to the point of paranoia. The Finns were loosely allied with Nazi Germany during their attacks on Russia, but only lasted until 1944 when the Finns went to war with Germany to expel them from the northern Lapland. Harsh war reparations were imposed on Finland in the post-war period by the USSR. However, this had a modernizing effect on the nation. They were largely optimistic after the war, having successfully defended their nation. Nationalism was high, and they remained free from absorption into the USSR, rather remaining a close trade ally, while strengthening its ties to Scandinavia as well. They were completely neutral during the Cold War and cooperated mostly with both sides. In 1952, they entered into the Nordic Union, with abrogations of passports, immigration, social welfare, and trade tariffs. Finland also shaped herself into the modern socialist welfare state it is today, with a government not unlike Sweden or Denmark. They joined the European Union in 1995 with Sweden and Austria, and 4 years later adopted the euro as their currency. The facilitation in trade and immigration boosted the economy and tourism. The economy is based on manufacturing, service delivery, and resource exports, and is highly ranked in information technology. Outsiders have frequently described Finland as a socialist utopia, which, while probably a little romanticized, they are currently ranked the 5th happiest country in the world. And who doesn't love happy reindeer?
Who doesn't? Wow.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the Finland episode.
This was a touching moment for me. Like, prior to now, I've got no clue about what Finland had gone through. No wonder they are resilient. No wonder they've got to fight for their country with every breath in them. And honestly, I admire Finns for that. You know, despite all they've been through, they still stand there. They still stand firm. And for them to be called the happiest country in the world, I think this was a late one because they said 5th happiest country, but I think currently they are the happiest country in the world. Guys, this is something, you know, you don't easily get out there. Despite all the fights, despite everything, the winter wars, guys, nobody can actually withstand that for a long time. What Finns did, I was touched. I was really touched by this. This was super interesting and educative. My love to you all, Finns. You guys are always superheroes, okay? Never allow anything take that away from you guys. You guys are really, really, really resilient. Thanks so much, guys, for watching. Don't forget to smash the subscribe button if it is the first time here, and also don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and we'll see you in our next video. Bye.